Artie Mogull, how you doing?
Good.
Every time I think of Artie Mogull around Cafe Roma, they all say, you've got to interview Artie Mogull. He knows it all. Boy, does he. I didn't realize you were the president of United Artists Records, vice president of Warner Brothers, vice president of MCA Records. You discovered a lot of people, and first of all, I didn't know, how did you get into show business? First of all, Tommy Dorsey, tell me about this.
Well, I went to Columbia University.
Right.
And between my junior and senior years, during my summer vacation, my uncle was the podiatrist in the Brill Building in New York. The Brill Building is what you know as Tin Pan Alley.
Right, I know the Brill Building. My agent was there, Bert Jonas.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Bert Jonas? He was my agent.
You sure you don't mean Dave Jonas?
Well, no, Bert.
Okay,
go ahead.
Anyway, and he said to me, how would you like a job working for Tommy Dorsey? So I got a job as a band boy. A band boy is the schlepper who puts the music on the bandstands and so forth.
This is for the big band days.
Right. This was during the era of the big bands, when the big bands were the stars. So I traveled all summer with Dorsey, and he took a particular liking to me. At the end of the summer, he says to me, I was studying to be an accountant. At the end of the summer, he says to me, listen, kid, you're going to be a lousy accountant. But you've got the personality to be great in the music business. When you finish college, I want you to come to work for me.
Right.
So when I finished college, I decided I'm going to go to work for him. Now, you have to understand that in 1948, when a Jewish boy comes home and tells his mother and father that he's going into the music business, that's like telling him you're going to become a pimp.
You're right.
They were shocked. But anyway, I went to work for him. And I worked for him for a year. And I loved it. And one night, we're in Cleveland, Ohio.
Right.
And I had a night off, and I went to hear a band. And I flipped over them. And it was the Ray Anthony Band.
Ray Anthony.
And I decided to leave Dorsey and take on Ray Anthony.
So you went with Ray Anthony?
Right.
Okay. He didn't have the bookends then. Okay, go ahead.
Not yet. But he was playing a song that I flipped over called the Bunny Hop. So I took the Bunny Hop to Philadelphia, where a kid was starting a show called The Bandstand named Dick Clark.
Dick Clark.
Who happened to have grown up next door to me in Mount Vernon, New York.
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah.
Good. Right outside of New York.
And I persuaded Dick Clark to run a bunny hop contest. And as a result, the bunny hop broke for the biggest thing in the country.
Right.
At any rate, one thing led to another, and I left Ray Anthony.
Right.
And I went to work at Warner Brothers Music Publishing Company. And I'm trying to remember the sequence here.
The Warner Brothers. Who was your very first artist?
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Let me do it in the proper sequence.
Yeah, go ahead.
One day, a guy comes to see me named Albert Grossman. And he says, oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
An agent friend of mine named Bert Block says to me, listen, there's a group playing at the Blue Angel tonight. You ought to go see them. I think Warner Brothers Records should sign them.
Right.
I said, okay, and I go see this group called Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Folk singers.
So I persuaded Warner Brothers Records to sign them, and of course they became...
So you discovered Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Correct.
Okay.
They were managed by this guy, Albert Grossman.
Right.
So the next thing you know, he sends a guy to see me named Roy Silver. Roy Silver brings me a guy with a guitar and a thing around his mouth playing the harmonica.
Don't tell me that's Bob Dylan.
Right.
Is that Bob Dylan?
Right. It was Roy Silver who brought me Bob Dylan.
You're kidding. Roy Silver brought you
Roy Silver, who owned Roy's Restaurant.
Roy's Restaurant here on Sunset, which now is the House of Blues.
Right.
Oh.
People think that it was Albert Grossman who brought me Bob Dylan. It was not. It was Roy Silver.
Okay.
All right? Now I go crazy over Dylan, and I sign him to Warner Brothers Music Publishing Company.
Right.
Next thing you know, Roy decides he wants to get married, and he needs money desperately. So he sells half of his Dylan contract to Albert Grossman. I was ready to kill him because I could smell...
Why would he do that?
Because he was desperate for money.
Oh.
I was absolutely ready to kill him.
Right.
But he comes to see me one day and he says to me, I found a comedian. I was so anxious to help him that I went down to the village to see the comedian, and I flipped over the comedian, so I signed Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby, the comic.
Just to give him money.
Right, right. What club? Do you remember the club it was in the village?
The Bitter End.
The Bitter End. I worked that too.
Right.
Go ahead.
So mainly to give Roy money, I signed Bill Cosby.
Wow.
And between Cosby, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Bob Dylan,
right,
history was made.
History? Good God. How did you become Bob Dylan? I mean, Bob Dylan, one of the greatest.
The first song that Dylan played me was Blowing in the Wind. Now, if you don't hear Blowing in the Wind, you don't belong in the music business.
Right, absolutely. Tell me something. What do you mean? You started as a song plugger? Or what's that mean, song plugger?
Well, back in those days...
You were a song plugger.
Yeah, back in those days...
You give a song and you plug it for... Go ahead.
It was the big bands who made the hits.
Right.
And they were they broadcast on the air. And the song plugger went around to clubs at night where the bands were playing and tried to persuade the bands to play the song you were plugging.
Right, right.
That's what a song plugger was.
Artie Mogull, you realize you started Folk Revolution, the whole new thing here in the world. Bob Dylan, Peter, Paul, and Mary. That's the whole revolution of folk,
man. I also signed Gordon Lightfoot.
Gordon Lightfoot.
I don't know if you know the name.
I certainly do.
Richie Havens. Did you know the name Richie Havens?
Yes, I do. I do. I'm very familiar with it. Tell me about the comedy record of Crosby and Alan Sherman. Tell me about that.
Oh,
you did Alan Sherman.
Alan Sherman came about in a strange way. He wrote some parodies for a testimonial dinner one night.
Right.
And I heard those parodies.
Was this at the Friars Club?
No, this was in California.
California?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I decided he could do a cute album.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how did you discovered Olivia Newton-John? You were the president of United Artists.
I can't take 100% of the credit for that. She was, I had jumped by now to MCA Records.
Right.
And when I got there, she was already signed, and her option was coming up.
Right.
And I went to England, and I went to see her at a studio and took one look at her, and she was so beautiful. I said, oh, we got to pick up her option.
Now tell me, a vice president of a record company, what does a vice president of a record company, what's involved in that?
Well, it depends what kind of a vice president. I was always the vice president of artists and repertoire, which means I was in charge of the artists and the repertoire they did.
Right. You had...
There's a vice president of marketing, there's a vice president of sales.
Right. So Kenny Rogers, where did he come in your life?
Oh, that's a great story.
Tell me.
At the time, I was a sick gambler.
Oh, you gambled too? I am too.
Oh,
You're not the only sick gambler. Skip E Lowe is a big gambler. I love to
was
gamble.
a terrible sick gambler.
Okay.
And I was the president of United Artists at the time, United Artists Records.
Right. One of the
I held a convention in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand.
Right.
And I'm about to go downstairs and gamble when my Chicago distributor, who was a close friend of mine, says to me, Artie, don't let your employees see you gambling the way you do. Let's go downtown and gamble where nobody can see us.
Right.
So we go downtown to the Golden Nugget.
Right.
And I'm playing blackjack, and a guy taps me on the shoulder. And he says to me, you're Artie Mogull, aren't you? I said, yeah. He says, listen, I'm Steve Wynn. I wonder if you'd have a cup of coffee with me. I said, sure. So we go into the coffee shop. He said, listen, I want you to do me a favor. There's a guy singing in the lounge named Kenny Rogers. I want you to sign him. I said, listen, he's deader than Kelsey's nuts.
Why did you say that?
because he's been in a group called the First Edition, and they were over with.
Right.
He says, look, if you sign him, I'll put up $100,000 to promote his records.
Steve Wynn did, huh?
So I suddenly thought to myself, geez, the way I gamble, not a bad idea to
Right.
have a Vegas hotel owner owe me a favor.
You're right.
So to do him a favor, I signed Kenny Rogers, who proceeds to sell 30 million albums. And I become the genius who signed Kenny Rogers.
And how about Steve Wynn today?
My daughters tell me I should never tell that story.
No, it's a great story. How many children do you have, Artie?
3 daughters.
3 daughters?
3 daughters, 4 grandsons.
How did you meet your wife? Tell me about your wife.
She was my secretary.
Your wife was your secretary?
Yeah, she died 8 years ago, actually.
I'm sorry, yeah. So, worked in what company she was with?
At United Artists.
United Artists. Tell me more about Warner Brothers.
You want to hear? I'll tell you a wonderful story. It's
I love your story.
One of my favorite stories. When I quit Capitol Records,
Right.
Ahmet Ertegun, who was the chairman of Atlantic, offered me my own label. Right? So I'm sitting in my little office that I rented,
Right.
ready to go to New York to close the deal with him.
Uh-huh.
The last act that I signed at Capitol was an English group called The Move,
The Move. Okay.
which was managed by a guy named Don Arden.
I know Don.
Don Arden was the father of Sharon Osbourne.
Right.
Okay? I'm sitting in my office when Don Arden comes to see me, and he says, because you left Capitol, they dropped The Move. I said, really?
Uh-huh.
He says, you want to sign them to your new label? I
Uh-huh.
said, yeah, but I haven't closed my deal yet.
Right.
He says, you want them or don't you? I said, of course I want them. He says, I want $10,000. I said, well, as soon as I go to New York and close my deal, I'll come back and give you the $10,000. He said, I want it right now.
Uh-huh.
I said, oh, my God. I go downstairs to the bank, and I take the last $10,000 I have in the world, and I bring it upstairs, and I give him the $10,000. I fly to New York, close my deal, get on the plane to fly back to California. And who sits down next to me on the plane but Mike Curb, who was then the president of MGM Records.
Right.
Having nothing better to do, I proceed to tease him that he puts out a lot of crap. The Osmond Brothers and so forth.
Yeah.
He says, wait till you hear the new group I just signed. I said, who's that? He says, an English group called The Move. I said, what? How could you sign them? I just signed them. Turns out the day after he sold them to me for $10,000, he sold them to Mike Curb for $20,000.
He made some money, didn't he?
Now I'm in a panic. I gave my last $10,000, right?
Right.
So I think fast, and I said to Mike, look, how about I'll sell you my piece of paper. Let's not have any litigation.
Right.
I'll sell you my piece of paper for the $10,000, and let's have no lawsuits or anything. So
Right.
I make the deal. I'm going to meet him Monday morning. He'll give me my $10,000 back, and I'm out of this.
Right, right.
Monday morning, I go to his office. I meet him, and I see my check for $10,000 on his desk, and I breathe my sigh of relief. But his lawyer says, listen, can you get us the tapes? So I call my former assistant at Capitol, and he says, listen, Artie, I can't send you the tapes because Mike Stewart at United Artists sent for them Friday. I said, oh, my God almighty. So I don't want Mike Curb to hear it, so I excuse myself. I go to another office. I call Mike Stewart. I said, listen, why did you send for the move tapes on Friday? Turns out the day after he sold them to Mike Curb for $20,000, he sold them to Mike Stewart for $30,000.
Tell me about Helen Redding. You discovered Helen Redding. Is this Helen Redding right here?
Yeah.
Who's that? Helen Redding and who?
Olivia and Buffy.
Olivia Newton?
Yeah.
And?
Buffy St. Marie.
Buffy, that's right. St. Marie. My God.
And that's Jeff Wald, Helen's husband.
Husband, Jeff Wald. He really was a big guy, wasn't he? Tell me about Helen Redding. How did you meet her? How did you discover her?
Oh, God, that's such a...
Go ahead. I love this lady.
So do I. She and I are really close friends.
Really?
Jeff I don't talk to.
Jeff is... nobody talks to Jeff anymore. Why is that so?
He's
They say so.
I don't
Okay,
even-
let's not even discuss him. Let's talk about Helen.
Well, when I became the vice president of A&R at Capitol Records,
Right.
I hired Jeff to be my assistant.
He was your assistant at the time when all this trouble
Well,
was?
he drove in from Chicago with Helen and her baby,
Right,
and he reported to work on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock.
right.
9:30, Sal Iannucci, my boss, calls me up to his office, and he says, when does that kid Walt start? I said, he started a half hour. He says, get him out of here. I said, what do you mean, get him out of here? He says, I had dinner with David Geffen Saturday. He tells me he's a madman. I said, well, he started a half hour ago. I said, I don't care. Get him out of the building.
Right.
I said, Sal, I can't do that. He drove from... Get him out of here. I couldn't talk him out of it.
Right.
So I go downstairs and I said, listen, Jeff, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're fired. He starts to cry. I said, look, I'll do anything to make it up to you.
Right.
Sign my wife. I said, what do you mean sign your wife? What does she do? He says, she sings. I said, all right, she can do two sides.
Oh, okay.
I never even heard her
Never
sing.
heard her sing.
First one was I Don't Know How to Love Him, sold 1 million copies.
Right. You never heard her sing?
Never heard her sing.
Why do you take such chances?
To get rid of him.
You take chances and you win. Most of the time you win. Look at Steve Lawrence in you here. Love Steve Lawrence. Edie Gourmet and Steve Lawrence. One of my favorite people, too. They're great. Tell me about Steve Lawrence. I love this man.
I love him. Yeah.
He's a great, and people love Steve Lawrence. They never say a bad thing about that couple.
No,
How did you, how, Steve is from New York, right?
yeah, I met Edie when she was with Tex Beneke as a band singer.
She was a band singer, Tex. And this is, who is this? Go ahead.
Elton.
Elton John. Look at young he is. How young. Look at both of you. Young. Good God, you have hair, too.
He cost me my job at MCA Records.
Elton John cost you?
Yeah, because when
Go ahead.
we all went to London to renew his contract.
Right,
It was, at that time, the biggest contract ever signed.
right.
And as we were about to sign it, he and his manager insisted on an Artie Mogull clause. In other words, if I left the company,
Yes.
they could get out of the contract,
Oh,
which you couldn't have.
right.
And as we were walking away from the meeting, my boss, Mike Maitland, turned to me and said, did you put him up to that? And I got into a big fight with him and quit the company.
Tell me something, Artie. Everybody loves this man. I do not. Why don't I love Elton John? He doesn't interest me or excites me at all.
Oh, he's a sweetheart. He's a sweetheart.
He is, probably, but his things don't excite me.
You don't like his music?
No, not at
Oh,
all. I do not like
he's
his
great.
music. No, I know he's great, but who's this?
Crystal Gale.
Crystal. I got to be honest with you. I just Elton John never excites
He's
me.
a sweetheart.
See, now I love this man. He excites me. He sings. He's a great singer. He's like a Dick Roman, Vic Damone. I like great singers like that. Vic Damone. Do you ever meet Vic Damone?
Yeah,
I love Vic Damone.
I hate him.
Oh, you do not. You love him.
I don't like him at all.
Who is this? Who's this?
Crystal Gale.
Crystal Gale. Great.
Don't it make my brown eyes blue?
Yes. Wonderful. Where did you meet her? How did you discover her?
I signed to the United Artists.
God, you signed. How many artists have you signed? Really? Think about it. You know.
Hundreds.
How do you feel about making all these wonderful people stars? You didn't even know they were going to be stars.
Interesting thing
Come
about
on.
Crystal is that when I signed her, she came to see me, and she was, I told her she was dressed like Aunt Jemima, and I took her shopping on Rodeo Drive.
Did you really?
Turned her into a glamour girl.
You've been honest. That's it. You turned her in. That's great. The folk revolution of Bob Dylan and Peter, Paul and Mary is such a great story. Together, these people, how you really transferred.
I'll tell you the other thing that I like, that I'm proud of.
Yes.
I married Peter, Paul, and Mary to Blowin' in the Wind, and I think that marriage was sensational.
So you really put them together.
That, marrying them to that song.
That song. It's a great song. It is. Tell me about
And then
the beach.
then I married Olivia to a great song. what, I forgot the name of the
That's
song.
okay. Living
I don't know how to
John?
love them.
Yes, that's another great. How about the Beach Boys? Tell me about the Beach Boys.
They really were there.
You mean just happened to be there?
Yeah.
I see. Who's some of the favorites you have, Artie? Some of the favorites. I mean, that you say you're proud.
Well, I have three favorite songs.
Okay.
You want to hear my three?
Yes, yes.
My three favorite songs are Crazy by Willie Nelson,
I love it. Yes, I do too.
God Only Knows by Brian Wilson,
Uh-huh.
and Blowing in the Wind.
Blowing in the Wind. Those are great songs. And the Blowfish. Tell me about Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh, it's a funny story.
Tell me about Hootie and the Blowfish.
I sent a friend of mine, an employee of mine, to a music conference in North Carolina.
Right.
And he calls me on the phone. He says, I heard a sensational group last night. I'm FedExing you their tape. I said, what's the name of the group? He says, Hootie and the Blowfish. I said, the hell with the tape, sign them. It's a hit name.
Great name. The name
It's
itself,
a hit
right?
name.
You know, I used to work with the Everly Brothers, Phil and Don, in the 60s. And I think they are two pure American voices, boy voices. Pure. They're great singers. They were with what company were the record company they were with? Do you remember?
Cadence.
Cadence. Those kids, those two kids, and they still sing today, and they're so pure and great. They're great. Who's this?
Olivia.
Is this Olivia?
Yeah.
God, she looks good there. Oh, look how pretty she looks.
I'll tell you one last story.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, don't tell me a last story. I love your stories. Go ahead.
This is a legendary story. It's a terrible story about me.
No, go ahead.
This is in the.
Why should it be
Did you
terrible?
Did you read the Geffen biography?
No.
Okay, this story is in the Geffen biography.
Okay.
When Dylan's contract with Warner Music was up,
Right.
he left and formed his own publishing company, and I left and became his partner.
Right.
And I bought a second-hand piano for the office. First day he comes up to the office and he says to me, the piano's out of tune.
Okay.
So I go to the Yellow Pages and I hire a piano tuner. Guy comes up to the office, he starts tuning the piano, and he tells me his daughter writes songs. I said, hey, do me a favor, tune the piano. He wouldn't stop telling me about his daughter. So to get rid of him, I said, all right, tell her she can come up tomorrow and play me some songs. Next day, this little short, ugly girl comes up and starts playing me songs. First three songs she plays me are Wedding Bell Blues, Stony End, and then When I Die. I almost fainted. Right?
Okay.
So I called my lawyer, and I said, I got this girl here. I want to sign her to 3 contracts. A publishing contract, a recording contract, and a management contract.
Right.
He says, how old is she? I said, 18. You'll have to get it court approved. I said, okay. But you can only get 3 years from the court. I said, no, I want 7 years. He said, you can only get 3 years from the court.
Right.
I said, then the hell with the court. He says, you're making a mistake. I don't care. Signed it to 7 years. Next thing you know, I get Barbara Streisand to record Stony End, The Fifth Dimension to record Wedding Bell Blues, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears to record And When I Die.
Wow.
And a few months later, first time in the history of Billboard, one publisher has 1, 2, and 3 in the charts. And she's invited, and I take it to see a new young agent at the William Morris office named David Geffen.
David Geffen.
Okay? She's invited to make her first ever public appearance at the famous Monterey Pop Festival.
Right.
She decides she's going to surprise me. She doesn't want me to see the act she's prepared.
Right.
Off we go to Monterey. And the day of the performance, I still haven't seen the act she's put together. She goes out and she has prepared an act where she and 3 girls do a type of Motown choreography, the worst act I have ever seen in my life.
Right.
As she runs off the stage, she says to me, "Well, what'd you think?"
Uh-huh.
I said, "What do I think? When I was a kid, my mother and father took me to the circus, and 3 elephants came out and danced to music. That's what you look like."
Ooh, boy. Artie, go ahead.
Monday morning, I come to the office, and there's a registered letter from an attorney disavowing all the contracts on the grounds of having been a minor when she signed them.
Oh, okay.
I'm ready to kill myself. Right? And she's signing with a new manager, David Geffen.
Tell me about Barbara Streisand.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm ready to kill myself.
Right.
My lawyer says to me, "Listen, you're going to have to give up the management contract. You're going to have to give up the recording contract.
Right.
But in the state of New York, a minor over 18 is held liable for sale. And in the publisher's contract with a minor,
Uh-huh.
the phrase is used, I hereby sell, assign, and transfer." Sure enough, the court rules in my favor.
Uh-huh.
And as we're walking out of the courtroom, Geffen turns to me and he says, "I'll settle with you right now for $460,000. I said, "If I have the check in a half hour, you got a deal." Gives me the check for $460,000. He took that contract and sold it to Clive Davis for $3 million. And that was the start of the Geffen fortune.
Gee, that was the beginning. So you really, you know something, Artie? I'm looking at you. You made millionaires. Many people out there millionaires.
Yeah,
Do you think they're appreciating Artie Mogull today?
You know who's not a
You've
millionaire?
made-
Me.
You? Oh, come on. You've made millions and millions and millions of billions of dollars for a lot of
I'll
people.
tell you something nice about
Because
Geffen.
you were a gambler, is that why?
I'll tell you something nice about Geffen. When I was
What?
moving last June,
Yeah.
he had dinner with Chris Barclow. And Chris said to him that I was hurting for money.
Right.
And he called me on the phone. And he said, "I hear you're hurting for money." And I said, "Yeah. Call my secretary in the morning. There's a check waiting here for $25,000.
Did he really? Did he
Right.
really?
Yep.
He's a friend of mine then. He became a good friend of mine, I tell you. I want to show you something before we can't now. It's too late. But I was going to show you. Oh, boy, I've had some interesting stories, boy, from you. Whew, were they great stories. Helen Redding and Bill Cosby and all these. Do you still see these people?
Very rare.
Do they ever call you and thank you and say, "Artie, thank you so very much for what you have done"? They appreciate it. Looking back over your life.
The phrase appreciative artist is a redundancy.
Yes, true. What have you learned about yourself, Artie? Come on. What have you learned about being so free